Name is Amanda Law. I am the event marketing manager here at Cadmium. And as always, it's my pleasure to be your MC today. Today's session is called What Will Your Members Actually Buy? Using Learner Market Intelligence to Build Programs That Sell. We're excited to share a little bit about the program and then we'll introduce our speaker. So today's session, as you likely know, associations invest significant time and resources developing out learning programs. But even great content can underperform when it does not align with what learners are actually willing to invest in. Today, we're going to look at learner market intelligence to help you better understand buying behavior, evaluate program ideas, and make more informed decisions before investing in development. I'm proud to say that Tracy is someone we've had the opportunity to host multiple times and partner with over the years, and is truly a go-to expert when it comes to helping mission-driven organizations transform their education programs into sustainable, high-impact learning experiences. With more than 20 years of experience in workforce development, Tracy is also an award-winning author and recognized thought leader in learning strategy, accessibility, and AI-enabled education. It is my pleasure to introduce Tracy King, Chief Learning Strategist and CEO of Inspire Ed. Tracy, thank you so much for joining us again. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Amanda. It's so good to be here. Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad you're here as well. If you're interested in knowing what programs members will actually buy, you're in the right place. So let's dig in. Let's start with a quick reflection. We're going to warm up the chat. We're going to get to know each other a little bit and start to think and reflect on some of the data that we work with that can help predict what our learners might buy. So when your team decides to build a new learning program or launch a new event, what's the first piece of data or input that you look at? What do you take a look at? What do you prioritize? What kind of information comes to mind that informs your decision making about a new program or event? Just pop your ideas in the chat, just a few words. Even if it's not a new program, if it's evolving a current program or combining programs, refreshing a program with some of the data points that you use to support decision making in that. Well, while you're thinking, often what comes to mind are committee requests, sometimes stakeholder requests. Sometimes we hear some requests coming out of evaluations, program evaluations for new things to try. Sometimes a board member will be invested in an idea, but often what we see is we focus on topics versus seeking out purchase priorities and seeking out retail behavior. So that's really what we want to talk about today. So here's where we're headed together. We're going to talk about a key distinction in the data that we collect. I'm going to offer you a listening framework for capturing buying behavior. And then we're going to wrap this all up by talking about how to operationalize this in what you're already doing where you are. You notice here that along the way, we're going to be stopping to chat 3 different times, but I want you to feel free to pop ideas and insights and questions in the chat window at any time, whenever they occur to you. And Amanda and I will make sure that we get all questions answered today. Like I said, we often rely on surveys. We often rely on committee input or topic requests, and that is real data. It tells us what's on members' minds, but does it tell us enough about what they'll register for, what they'll pay for? That's the shift we're going to explore next. Now, many associations field member needs surveys. Needs assessments are really useful tools. They're designed to help surface awareness about our brand, about our programs, about things that we want to see more brand awareness around, and also relevance about how people perceive value in what we're offering, but they don't predict purchasing behavior. A member can genuinely care about a topic and register that on a member's needs survey and still not register for the project or program. So member analysis takes us a little bit further into what members will invest in. We explore things like content priorities weighted by willingness to invest, format preferences that are tied to buying contexts. We look at pricing sensitivity, but also with decision threshold information. And then we take a look at a competitive landscape because we want to know what alternatives there are in the market. When we rely on needs assessment and some anecdotal data that we pull from survey comments, we can build a quality program around that topic that could rank high, but it still might not hit the mark that we've set for it. And we don't know whether that's because there's high interest, but it's not a high priority, because there's interest in a topic area, but not specific in the specific learning objectives that we built the program around. Is there a competitive program that's already filling the need? Was the timing a challenge? Was the program offered during a busy cycle or after professional development funds have been expired? Well, needs assessments aren't going to answer those questions for us. Now, this isn't a criticism of needs assessments. They do what they're designed to do. The gap is that interest data and investment data are different signals. A member can rate a topic 5 out of 5 and still not buy it. So what we need to know is the why before the buy. So I want you to think about one program from your portfolio right now. Bring a program to mind. Now I want you to reflect, what do you know versus what do you need to know about the participants that you want to enroll in this program? It can be events or education. What do you know versus what do you need to know about them to entice them to enroll? Give that a thought for a sec. Now, what questions would you like to ask those participants to fill in the blanks of what you need to know? That's what I'd love for you to pop in the chat right now. What questions do you wish that you could ask them if you could? Hey, Kelly. ASAE was great. All right. What are some of the questions that you would love to ask those prospective participants? Some of the things that you don't yet know. Pop those ideas in the chat for me. Do you know about their buying behavior? Or what the priority topics are for them in their stage of development? What describes reasons for taking the course? Right. What are their motivations? I love that. Knowing about the motivations of your learners, your event guests, is really important for us to understand how to design and position those events. Well, often we'll ask there are a lot of gaps in what we know that we're going to talk about some opportunities today to pivot some of the questions that we ask in order to fill some of those gaps and give us some more market-oriented type of data. So let's talk about a listening framework. Now, when we're talking about capturing the data that we need to make decisions and produce programs that will sell, I like to frame it as our listening campaign. We're in a human-centered, relationship-driven industry here. There are things that we know about our members, guests, learners, and there are things that we need to know in order to serve them better. So how can we ask and then listen for what we need to know, everything we need to know about our people? Well, as you skim these 4 forms of listening, you may be doing some or all of these already. We often have several listening channels, but they may not be tuned to the frequency that we need or coordinated in a way to generate the kind of intelligence that we need to make program and pricing decisions. So let's take a quick tour here. To capture the widest data pool, we field a survey. You may already be sending needs surveys to your members, of course, evaluation surveys at the end of programs, with some question tweaks in the events and education sections of your member needs survey. You can already begin to capture answers to some of the questions you may have in that gap space, what you would love to know about your prospective participants, and then sort them by career segment or persona. See how powerful that can be. Surveys typically confirm some things that we knew or have been trending, but they also raise more questions, and that's where interviews come in. When we want to go deeper, we want to find out the why behind response trends, we turn to interviews. We can focus on a particular segment that we want to offer a new program for, or that has been missing from a program that we hoped would be attending in large numbers. Or we can study key constituencies. We might want to ask, what students in our pipeline really want from us as their association, or how much of our members' annual conferences and training budget is allocated toward our programs or other organizations' programs, and how much is out of pocket. That's really important. We might want to know what are some of the most important factors in making professional development purchase decisions, or what do you wish you knew before you took on a manager role, or what does the process look like when you were taking the next steps into that role, so that you can hear some of the problems and challenges in making that transition that could inform how we position programs. You might ask, when you learn something new, what steps do you take? What does that look like? You might ask whether the top 5 content priorities from the member needs survey, what those came back as, do you agree with those, or should something else be in the top 5? So answers to these questions and others help us understand that quantitative data better, and then challenge us to listen to the why behind the buy, so that we know with confidence how to position our program. Now, you could stop at interviews, and many often do, but focus groups help us validate what we've heard. What I do is I take insights from the survey and the interviews, and I draft a prototype program for groups to respond to. I take content priorities for the level of learning, hitting on the pain points and aspirations that I heard in the survey and the interviews, and I put that within a design, an experience design that's going to deliver on the value proposition that the data says that they're looking for. And then I pair that with our ideal price point. So instead of asking on a survey, how much would you be willing to pay for, say, a skill development cohort program, we know the answer. We know it's going to come out really low, right? What would you be willing to pay? But when we present a prototype so that they can actually see and assess the value and then respond to whether the price corresponds, we're going to get much richer and authentic feedback. We'll often hear things like, if you build this program, I will buy it. Or if you add this component here, I'll budget for my team to enroll in this program. We've run prototypes and interviews before. You can do that. But the synergy in groups gives us a lot richer improvement data before we bring a program to market. The tweaks that come out of a group conversation are really rich. Now, our informal channels are also amazing at helping us spot emerging needs, helping us see problems or constraints so that we can respond in a timely manner. That they help us continue to validate decisions that we've made or challenge us to rethink some things. Those could come from member service calls, from our program evaluations, from communities or social media conversations, polls that we field in webinars, program utilization data from our LMS, stakeholders doing some specific outreach on some questions for us. Could come from, feedback you get at your membership booth at meetings or cancellation reasons. The challenge, of course, is finding a home for this data so that it's accessible to you and can be used for sense making. However we're capturing data, whatever channels that we're listening to members, it's so very important that we identify who we're listening to. Now, in our survey tools, we need the capability to sort data by segments and other persona type information like career segment or income bracket. Sometimes location is important, or specific roles, depending on the features of your industry. The key point is that aggregate data averages out the signal. Right. So a topic that ranks number 3 overall might rank number 1 for mid-career professionals that you want to build a program for, and may not register at all for senior leaders. Right. Segmented data informs both design, what we want to build for whom, and marketing, how to position it for people who will actually buy it. Now, segmented data can also help you build learner personas. The learner persona box here on the slide rips right from our template. This is the type of info that we want to pull together to really understand personas so that they inform decisions from the program format that we choose, to timing of hosting the program, to the topic, to the pricing. Now, if we want to reach beyond being transactional with presenting new programs, we have to understand our personas' stories, because creating programs for everyone, we know it's creating programs for no one. Prospects can't see themselves in it if it doesn't fit into the story of who they are and who they're becoming. We want to strike that "this is for me" feeling that makes the purchase an automatic yes, because your prospective registrant feels seen by you. Their needs are acknowledged by you. I want to emphasize the second point on the slide here, collecting defining quotes, which you'll also see in our persona profile. Notice how members talk about their challenges, how they talk about their aspirations. All of that content is marketing gold, and not only informs us of their concerns and their needs, but this is one way that we ensure our target audiences feel heard, and so that they can see their needs reflected in the programs that we prepare for them. This is how we create that resonance. Our program descriptions, our marketing copy are informed by their keywords, their stories, their concerns, their dreams. All right, so let's walk through some question examples. We've been thinking about some of the areas that you might be curious to know, pivoting from just needs assessment to more market-oriented type questions that help us flesh out buying behaviors. So how can we format questions to listen keenly for members to describe behavior, to name purchase constraints, how they make choices that can inform which programs that we bring to market and how we design them? So for content priorities, instead of asking for respondents to rate how important a topic is to them, we could, for example, ask if you could invest in one event or one professional development experience in the next 12 months, what skill would it address? Targeting skills here because we're in the skills first workforce right now. Really important. Skills help us really dig into those broader topics to know what precisely within the larger topic of leadership, or the larger topic of utilizing AI, or the larger topic of, taking a leadership position in an organization, what's the skill? When we know more precisely what the skill they're keen on developing, we can then address that, right? For format preferences, we'll often ask, do you prefer in-person or virtual? A market-oriented framing might be when you last chose a program, what format was it, and what made that format right for your schedule and your budget? Obviously, this is more of a conversation format. You could break it up into several questions on a survey, but what we're getting at is behavior that they've engaged in before versus a stated preference, because they don't know if the program, the skill, let's just stay on the skills track. You want to offer a program on using AI agents for something specific within, your industry. A person doesn't know what the outcomes and experience are that you'll be offering. And so to prefer an in-person over virtual, or prefer virtual over in-person, that decision isn't informed by the specifics, the specificity of the skill that you would be providing for, growth for. And so it's important for us to ask about past behaviors and then then we can ask them to predict future behaviors based on that. So for price sensitivity, we often ask, how much would you pay? And give some ranges, right? And we could predict what the answers will be. Instead, consider asking, at what price point would this be an easy approval for your manager or for you, if we know that they're the purchaser? At what point would you start comparing and looking at alternatives? See what I'm saying? Picking up what I'm putting down? Let's look at some other examples. For the competitive landscape, instead of asking, do you use other providers, we could ask, where else are you or your employer investing in professional development on this topic, or events regarding this area, the area of expertise that you feature? The difference here is we can get a lengthy list of other providers if we ask that first question, but we don't know if those are the providers that they would go to for this specific thing that we're looking to launch. They could interact with those other providers in a variety of different ways. So we really want to frame a question to know precisely where the competitor point is. For the decision pathway, this isn't something that is typically asked on a needs assessment, a needs survey. But something that is important for us to ask is, walk me through how you decided to register or not register for the last program you considered. Or a question that I love to ask is, when you are ready to learn something new, you've identified something new that you want to learn, walk me through the steps you take to learn that new thing. What's the first and the next step? When in that process do you decide to purchase a program or attend a conference? We want to know where we fit within that arc of learning something new, where the investment comes in their decision-making process. So some of these recommendations might be tweaks for you, but these tweaks are really, really meaningful. A quick note I want to make about Likert rating questions. Likerts are those rate this from 1 to 5, right? Super common, but they don't always tell us what we think they tell us. Unless our Likert questions are descriptive and we're stating with specificity what each number rating means, then each survey respondent is interpreting what it means for themselves. And I guarantee you, they don't all mean the same thing, which means that this is a weak link data indicator for us, and it can be dangerous to build assumptions upon. I use Likerts and in our surveys, in our studies, but I define what each number means so that we know precisely what our averages mean, and that can inform decision making. Let me give you a few examples from things that we've learned in studies like this. One large scientific association, we were able to triangulate content priorities for key member segments and then launched a virtual skill-based program that sold out repeatedly. For a small staff, individual member and trade association, we discovered that the greatest needs were in career cusps, moving from contributor to manager and from manager to leader. And so we designed a curriculum that could be delivered in 3 different ways. And then we introduced lead generation and sales strategies in order to position those programs for those different constituencies. In a national association seeking to strengthen their career pipeline, the data clarified what students want from their national association. And it was a surprise. It's not access to programs for this industry, but it's access to the member network regionally. Also within this very diverse membership, we've identified content priorities for key constituencies and the why behind the ask, which not only helps us design the right types of learning programs, but influences how we're going to communicate about them. So for each of these organizations, they were doing needs assessments, but not with market-oriented listening before our collaboration. And now they not have everything that they need to continue this work. All right. So we've been thinking about a program and an audience, thinking about what we need to know about their buying behavior before committing resources to a program, right? When you're thinking about that now, consider which forms of listening would give you that intelligence for that specific market. And what's one question you would ask that you haven't asked before? If you could pop that in the chat, let's talk about that now. What question, something that I've posed or something that you've been reflecting on, would you like to ask now that you haven't asked before? I like the comment, shifting questions from general needs to willingness to invest. Absolutely. It's really where we need to drive some of the data collection that we're doing. What are some of the top education items that they're willing to invest in? For sure. And if we can pair that with some of the emerging needs or emerging challenges that they would like to see in those education formats, that helps us pair the right format with the right content priority. Love that. Other questions that you would ask now that you haven't asked before. One question I see is, how can it be improved to be better to meet participant needs? Sure, that's definitely open-ended, and that would fit great in a conversation to start out in kind of an open way, so you're not leading in a particular direction. If we're going to ask it on a survey, we might want to be a little bit more specific about certain aspects of the meeting that we've probably anecdotally heard that there was feedback about, to see if that was like one loud voice or if there's a widespread sentiment about it. But yeah, like, where can improvements be made? Another reason why to be specific about that is there might be some improvements that we're not capable of making, like reducing the price of annual conference. That might not be something that we're going to consider. So we might want to pitch in the question some areas that we want to ask how can this component be improved, or how would this better meet your needs as a participant? I like that. And I also really like the course for like an evaluation, for example. Tell us the reasons for taking this course. That really helps us understand the why before that buy, so that we can be prepared to position that for other learners that have that same need and have that same focus. Love that. Great questions. Some of the example questions that we have in our survey for learner market analysis are: how much do you spend each year on events? And I'll ask later, how much do you spend each year on training? Definitely ask that separately. And we will define training. Sometimes we don't use the word training. It depends on the nomenclature that the industry typically uses in relationship with their association, but I'm going to use that word for us today because we know what that means. And I always want to ask how much of that is out of pocket, because we're really trying to understand the price sensitivity story. And when we can segment out the data, we can see which segments are particularly pressed. We know right now everyone is feeling the weight of purchase decisions, but segmenting this out here really can help us make some discerning decisions. We'll ask, do you consider X association your primary professional organization? This helps us know where we're ranking in the other organizations that they turn to for different needs. We'll ask about the other organizations that they do turn to for specific things, for specific events or specific types of training, because we want to know where the area of competition is. We'll ask about content priorities in at least 3 ways. I create a Likert matrix with priorities that we've predicted through the data that the association currently has in terms of registrations and LMS course sales, and what their stakeholders say are important, and what maybe if the industry has a formal content outline, we'll pull from that. But we predict some of the top content priorities, and we ask them to rate in a table. And then we'll also have open text questions, at least 2, that will ask about what are the emerging needs for you, professionals like you in the industry. What are the greatest challenges? Sometimes we'll ask about, what's your next step? Where do you aspire to take your career next? All of those questions, then looking at the matrix data, really help us triangulate what are the most important content priorities, and specifically what we might like to offer for development in those areas. Another thing that's really important to ask about is barriers. What are barriers to sales? We know price sensitivity, we ask about barriers there, but what are other barriers to purchase? Are there other barriers that we want to explore in terms of buying behavior or participating in our programs? We also, very importantly, ask about what are the top priorities in selecting a conference or in selecting a professional development program, and I want them to priority rank the selection of options that we offer. We'll offer price point, speakers, topics, timing, format, and location. Typically, sometimes the association will have other responses they want us to put in the mix. But it's really important to see if pricing is actually the top ranked priority in making the decision. I'm going to tell you, it isn't often. Often it's a topic that's relevant to what I'm doing in my career right now, or however you phrase it, something that has to do with content that's aligned with my area of growth, my leading edge. And so if we see that, then we know that our content prioritization is really going to be important work in terms of how we design and position programs. And then if we can price it right, we're going to see the types of sales that we want to see. Great work. Okay, so how can we build this into how our team works so that this is a repeatable practice? That's where we're headed next. The biggest operational shift is moving from periodic surveys to sustained listening. A listening rhythm doesn't require a large research investment every quarter. It requires intentionality. It requires knowing which form of listening we're going to use, when, and for what purpose. And so formal research is something like our member needs survey is something like a learner market analysis that partners a survey that's market oriented with interviews and focus groups so that we can really pull together that decision grade intelligence. Typically, we do this, we tie this to a major portfolio review. We're looking at everything we offer and making sure that we've got some data substance underneath these offers and their price points, or it could be tied to a significant new program investment as well. These aren't things that we do every year. These often aren't things we do even every other year. It's often something like maybe every 3 years that we invest in something like that because the data is durable and we can continue to validate it through the other ways that we listen to our constituents. Program generated data is something that we're continuously collecting. It's something that's already happening. We just have to, collect it in a way that we can derive meaning from it. So those are your enrollment patterns, registration, cancellation reasons. It's all the data that you can pull from your AMS, your CRM, your LMS, your registration platform. And then there are ambient signals. There's a lot of data that's around us that if we captured it, could offer us some really rich information to support decision making or to challenge some of our thinking about programs. Those are member service conversation themes. If you capture themes, really powerful information, we can find out in real time if there's a problem with a registration portal or a workflow, if there are problems inside of an online learning program, people are getting stuck in a certain place, or if there's feedback about a program that people might not have left on an evaluation, but several people have called, like, are those themes getting to the right people? Community forum threads or social media themes can also really be useful to us. Hallway conversations at events, we can give our stakeholders assignments for both asking questions and listening for certain types of information at our events that can be useful. Questions that we ask during webinars, like I have 3 pit stops in this webinar. And if you're offering webinars too, asking the types of questions that might produce some of the feedback that you need or insights into challenges and aspirations and behaviors, those are things that are going to be useful to you. All of these ambient signals that are all around us just need a capture mechanism so that we can make use of them. Now, market intelligence is only useful when it touches decisions. Anytime we want to implement a new query, whether formal or informal, we need to consider first the concept. Why are we going to do this? What do we want to listen for? And then that informs the design. How we'll format that listening channel so that we'll be able to capture the insights that we need, that reinforce what we know, but also show us what's emerging, fill that gap of what we don't yet know. When we launch, we want to inform constituents that we're listening, tell them how important it is that we hear from them, tell them what we'll do with the insights, how to impact them. And then post-launch, we of course need to have a plan for what we're going to do once we do collect that data. So how does it need to be formatted? And by when? To support decision-making by whom? So this is a great flow to implement as you're operationalizing your listening campaigns. Now, throughout our time today, I'm sure you've been thinking about the data that you already collect. It could be LMS data, registration patterns, post-event surveys, your email engagement stats, all of that, all of those signals that you are already collecting about member buying behavior, and potentially you're thinking about all the different homes that lives in. An important part of operationalizing intelligence is implementing a queryable structure. Now, one of the big promises that AI is leveraging right now is learning analytics, right? Predictive analytics. And we're all really excited about that. But I got to tell you, that can only happen if data is organized where we can ask it questions. Now, when we think about all of the data we have, that feels pretty overwhelming. That's a lot. But we don't have to start by organizing all of it at once. We can start with the data that's most important to making the decisions that are before us, and thinking about how we house that so that we can query it, so we can ask it questions, so we can see trends, so we can follow up on the priorities that it reports to us. You could start with a spreadsheet. You could start with Microsoft Access. You could start with Airtable. You may have another database base on hand where you work. That's an option for you to get started too. All of that to say, when intelligence is queryable, you can answer trend questions. You can compare across those segments. You can recognize important patterns, and all of that supports specific decisions. And these are the questions that reduce enrollment risk. That you can't answer with a single survey or with locked PDF reports. This is how our investment in collecting data, all of the ways that we're listening to our constituents, really does the most for us. So we can get started today gathering better intelligence by changing the questions that we ask, and also by changing how we store the answers. You don't need to hire a consulting firm out the gate here. You may want to invest in support for full market analysis, but you can dig in with these 3 quick start recommendations right away. You can start by rephrasing maybe 3 to 5 questions on your next member survey to capture buying behavior data alongside that interest data. You could conduct some short interviews after your next event with registrants, but also with members who considered but did not register. Let's find out why behind the buy and why they didn't buy. We could also set up a shared spreadsheet with consistent fields so that intelligence starts accumulating in one place. So it starts to tell us a bigger story. All right, this is our last chat pit stop, and a place for us to answer all of your questions too. So what I want to hear about is, what are you inspired to do next? Let's huddle up right now. Let's chat about, based on what we've covered today, what's one specific change you might be able to take to your team, how you gather data or how you use learner intelligence. And Amanda, feel free to hop in here too with any insights you might have from what you've heard or what you're seeing in the chat.
Sounds good. Will do. Thank you, Tracy. Watching the chat line. Chat line. That sounds very 90s. Watching the comments. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, come on in.
There are a couple things you've said. At first, when you were talking about Likert and how they may or may not really be useful, I was like, oh no. You swung back around and made it make a lot more sense. I actually have a question that I'm curious in terms of what you've covered, if you have advice on. I feel like right after an event, right after a webinar even, so often members of my team will come up and say, oh, so and so, we're talking about this. And then others will go, oh gosh, this person said the same thing. And then the small group was discussing X. And I've always loved to gather that and to track that immediately after the event. But my question is, how do you translate that, especially to leadership or to others, to help them to understand? I think that's beyond anecdotal. I think that is such great information. If it's obviously, if it's like more than 1 or 2 people saying the same thing, but if it's a group.
Yeah. So it's important to have like a capture mechanism at your event when you're hearing these types of comments, so that people know that you're looking for comments and where to put them. And then you can add that to the qualitative content data from your evaluations from the event, and it all becomes sentiment data. Right. And you can see, does that correspond with what we're seeing in our formal evaluations as well? And if you're seeing a pattern, then that gives you enough to start asking some questions. And maybe if someone did approach you and they're okay with you asking questions again after the event, you can go deeper with them about that. But yeah, that's absolutely super, super important information. We just need a way to collect it, because it ends up on a sticky note or just in a conversation, and then we lose track of it. And so that capture mechanism is really important.
Definitely. I like the sentiment data. I like that, because I feel like if you use the word anecdotal or an
Yeah,
aside. It's not taken quite, you put the word data in there.
that's
The
right.
sentiment data. I love it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Rena added update our evergreen member survey as a response to your question.
Yeah, such a great idea because with some tweaks in our event and professional development, areas of the survey, we can really improve the type of data that we're collecting. And it's so easy to use this survey that we've used before for so many years, because we do like to see
Mhm.
trends across questions, but we need to ask, like, are we collecting what we need to know to make better decisions? Does this data can we rely on this to make decisions? Could we be more descriptive in our Likert? There's lots of tweaks that we can make in order to make that data more robust for us.
Absolutely.
For sure. Yeah.
Watching the chat in case there are any late additions here or
You,
Q&A.
you guys are
So
quiet on me today.
we are quiet,
It's okay.
although there people might be a little distracted. We just heard that Dolly Parton passed away. I
Oh,
just
I know.
heard
I heard
others.
that.
So
Sad.
a little
Yeah.
difficult to concentrate, but yeah, we still have a little bit of time. So anyone who has a question or a comment or anything, the chat prompt, please pop it in and we'll continue to keep an eye on that. I do have a couple other things, Tracy, that I thought were really impactful that I jotted down while you were talking. I loved when you said creating programs for everyone is creating programs for no one.
Yeah.
That's something I'm going to keep in mind that I've learned today. And it's something that you know intrinsically, but it's not maybe something that you think of each time. So I love that. Uh,
Yeah, we know
yeah,
that
I like
from
that a
our
lot.
marketing friends, that when
Hmm.
we're preparing marketing plans, we have to have a primary target audience, so
Absolutely.
that what we're putting together, the communications resonate with that audience. In the same with designing any experience, we
Hmm.
have to have a priority target audience, knowing that a lot of other people will find value in it. But if they can't hear themselves in it, in that story, if they can't see
Right.
that are acknowledging their needs and have prepared something that is for them, then it's just another thing. It's easy to
Mm.
bypass the email. It's easy to ignore,
Yep.
the mailings or the ads in the magazine. And so that's so very important that they see and hear their stories in what we prepare for them.
Absolutely. Very good point. The other thing that I jotted down that I really liked, interest data is not the same as investment data. You need to identify the why before they buy.
Exactly.
So good.
We are really good at collecting interest data. We collect lots,
Okay.
but that doesn't always inform us about behaviors. And so asking
Mhm.
about past behaviors, and what, specifically they would invest in, can help us get closer to confidence that we'll be able to sell out a program. Really important to make that little shift there.
Absolutely. All right, we have one more. We have a question that came in. So, if
Great.
an existing program is seeing declining enrollment, how do you determine what really is causing that? Is it an issue with topic, format, price, or something else?
Yeah. Um, Something like this really deserves more of that in-depth conversation. I would start with some interviews, and they can be informal. It doesn't have to be like a formal study format, but talking to people who attended and their experience on those factors, talking to people who you notice didn't attend, and asking them why and what would make an experience like this be worthy of the investment. Then you can really flesh out what some of those themes are, that you can take back to the team. Maybe the topic area, it was large and we didn't know precisely where to focus that would really hit on the challenges that people are facing, or maybe they weren't really looking for information. They were looking for skill development. They want to be able to do something different versus just understand the problem better. Maybe they thought that the description was kind of general and they feel like they're in a more advanced space within this topic area, so they didn't think it was for them. Like, there are lots of things that could be happening, and it also could be a competitive issue or a current economy issue. But in order for us to know, we have to ask. And so something like this, when there are several factors, conversations are some of the quickest ways for us to hear what the themes are, and then start to test what some of those changes, the best changes that we might want to implement to try and appeal to a wider audience.
Sounds great. I've got a really good question here too. Lacey, thank you for submitting this. So we are in an environment of more competitive resources in mission-driven organizations and nonprofits. Many of us with non-market research backgrounds are being asked to shift our perspectives and culture. In our context, a lot of this is a shift from grant-funded education, that's a really good point, and requires a shift to a sales-based mindset. What is your best advice for nonprofit professionals trying to adapt? That's a good one.
That's a great question. Thank you for that. So one thing is, I mentioned how we work in a relational industry. But we are also, if we offer anything for sale, we are in sales. And it becomes really important that we think about the design features that will appeal to the widest audience or appeal to the segment that we really want to attend this program. Knowing that, annual conference, we want everybody to come. It's for everybody. But there has to be, like, you have a bell curve in your membership of where most of the people are versus the other smaller segments. And so targeting the top of your bell curve is really what I'm talking about. And so when we're grant funded and we don't have to worry as much about the marketing and sales, then we can become softer on some of those design and communication strategic decisions. I'll tell you what I'm seeing. I'm seeing that the events and professional development programs that are selling the most right now have a skill-based component. SHRM has this massive Center of Excellence, a COE, on the skills first workforce. It's a huge shift in corporate America. And that impacts what corporations want professionals to learn and what they will fund in terms of their learning. And so I'm seeing the associations that offer the types of formats that include a skills component are seeing more success right now. There's a lot of pressure that's outside of our control right now economically. I just want to acknowledge that and how painful that is. But when we're shifting to having to be in charge of marketing and selling, having that sales-based mindset, realizing that sales isn't evil or bad or dirty, that we are trying to meet needs, but we're also trying to fund our ability to meet those needs. And so we're not seeking to gouge members. We're seeking to provide them the best experience that's as affordable as we can make it, but also meets the needs that they've told us that they have. And so there is a mindset shift in it. There is a skill shift in the design decisions and marketing decisions, how you position programs, with knowing who's going to buy it, whether it's the employer or the individual. And then also just really leaning into that story, that persona story. What will people be able to be or do as a result of our program? While convening is important, that change aspect, that transformation aspect is really where I'm seeing professionals in the workforce put their dollars right now. Amanda, were there any thoughts or anything that you think I left out of that?
No, not at all. I will piggyback onto what you said about, you are in sales, and we had someone last month join us from event management side, and she said she's not in sales, and we all said, yes, you are.
Yes,
So
everybody's
much of
in
what
sales.
all of us do is in sales, right?
Yeah.
But the idea that, what you've been talking about, what your members are interested, what they'll buy, what's the market shifting, and kind of, what's happening out there. We're, especially from a marketing standpoint, starting to really look more at generational shifts with Gen Z,
Mm-hmm.
because this generation is very different in terms of their, like their interaction with associations, like how they're
Yeah.
going about just being in the workforce even. So
Mm-hmm.
we actually have some great upcoming conversations and tools that we're putting together that are really examining that. So I think it's almost like it's a really good time in a way to start really
Yeah.
looking at what your ideal people, like who they are, what they're doing, and if they're shifting a lot as well. So
Yeah. Build that persona for your Gen Zers.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap up. I think we've got some really great questions. Thank you, everyone who
Yeah.
submitted comments, questions. Tracy, thank you for the great deep dive. I think there's so many nuggets here. I'm going to
Mm.
rewatch the webinar, and I encourage everyone certainly rewatch for little nuggets as well, or share with others. It will be shared at the end of the week at the latest with the recording. So you can expect that to come from me. One other thing I would like to share, Tracy has been so kind in extending a gift to all of our attendees today. Tracy's provided a complimentary copy of their new ebook, which is called the Pricing Learning Playbook. And I've given it a look through, and just like today's presentation, it's chock full of really, really good information. So I encourage you to download it. It will be on the same website under Cadmium University where you attended the webinar today, where you clicked to join. It's added as an option there for attendees. So I encourage you to download that, check it out. Like I said, lots of great information there. And we hope that you're learning today with a better understanding of how learner market intelligence really can drive and help you develop your programs. Um, that's pretty much it. The last thing I'll say in terms of closing us out is just thank you on behalf of Cadmium, and thank you for, if you take a moment and fill out the attendee survey, it's also located in the same spot that I just described. So we appreciate that. And finally, the last thing I'll say again is just thank you, Tracy. Always a pleasure, and we really appreciate you sharing all that you did today.
Love spending time with you. Thanks so much.